Hi there. In this lecture, we're going to talk a little bit about the future of social media, and what I hope to do is give you a little bit of theory to help you, of course, because you know I love theory, to help you understand where we might be headed. Even though it is really hard to predict the future, it's really hard to say exactly where we'll be in a year with social media or 10 years from now, if even social media will be a thing. I think it will. There's always some theories to help us understand how to process what's happening. And the theory and the theoretical constructs I'm going to talk about in this lecture are pretty timeless, and I think will almost always be relevant in the field of media studies. And that's reassuring to me, both as a historian who's interested in communication and as someone who's trying to navigate just life in general and continue to teach this stuff and make it current and relevant. So I had the opportunity to go to a conference this past summer called Teachapalooza in St. Petersburg, Florida, sponsored by the fine folks at Poynter, which was just a wonderful environment, fantastic conference where I learned a lot about technology and new skills. And the last session we had during the conference was a session about the future of journalism and the future of social media in a lot of ways. And last year at this time, the lecture you're going to watch was actually compiled by Dr. Hutchins and Dr. McNeil for this class last year. Pretty interesting to see that this time last year, everyone thought that the future was going to wearable technology. And so I think that lecture is really helpful for you to watch for a historical perspective, because what's interesting to me about what I learned at Teachapalooza, no one really said much at all about wearables. Instead, the futurists that we had come talk to us said that we're really headed to virtual reality. And they basically told this room full of educators that by the time our freshman students are seniors, they're all going to have VR technology in their pockets, much like we have with our smartphones today. It's kind of mind-blowing to me. The best examples I have, some really interesting examples, are linked in the lecture for this week, or linked in the D2L module. We saw a interesting video about this place out in Utah called The Void, which is a hyper-real experience that immerses participants in a real-life video game simulation. And not only is it interesting to see the promo video for The Void, but my favorite thing about it is watching the reactions that people have to being there in this virtual reality environment. If you've ever participated in any wearable technology, if you've ever used Google Cardboard or Google Glass, we do have a colleague here on campus who has some Google Cardboard, so if you want to try it out, let me know. I'll try to facilitate that for you. It is pretty intense. It's surreal to be immersed that much in a mediated environment. And so social's headed that way too. One of the articles you read this week is about social media and virtual reality, and I've also given you a critical piece to think about, because you know I love doing that. So think about where we might be headed with social and virtual reality, and if those two worlds really can mix. Now, the theoretical component I want to give you for today comes from a prolific media scholar, Marshall McLuhan, and you've got an article to read that essentially summarizes his main work. He's known for the phrase, "the medium is the message," and what that means in a nutshell is that each new medium that comes on the scene creates a new way of understanding life, reality, content, you name it. So this is a really hard concept to wrap your head around for a lot of people, and I'm really generalizing and summarizing it. You can't do McLuhan justice in a short 7-minute online lecture video, but the example I always use to help my undergraduates understand the fact that the medium is the message is, think about the many different ways that we have to communicate today. I could send you an email, I could send you a text message, I could tweet you, I could Snapchat you. Whenever I communicate with one of those channels, I'm not just communicating a verbal part of the message, I'm also communicating something by the very medium I choose to communicate with you. If I communicate via email, that probably means I'm pretty serious about something, because that is the official channel of communication. It depends on the formality of the email that I write as well. If I snap you something, that is going to be a completely different message altogether than something that I would communicate in email. So even though we have all these different channels for communicating, the channel we choose to use for communicating is saying something, sometimes even more than the message itself. And that's my short example to help you try to figure out what McLuhan's really saying, because this is a totally deep, awesome concept. But think about that as you're reading the article and trying to figure out what it all means. Very, very important today to understand that media are definitely an extension of ourselves today more than ever. McLuhan's ideas initially were spot on, and it would be really interesting to hear what he has to say about today's media environment. Now, also in this unit, you'll see that there are 3 optional readings, totally optional, but I mentioned them earlier in the semester, and I think they're still somewhat relevant for today's unit or this week's unit. I've included 3 chapters from a book that transformed the way I think about media studies. It's called Amusing Ourselves to Death by Neil Postman. And it was written in 1984. You'll be able to tell it's a dated book by reading it. But his argument is that, yes, we have all these new access to mediated channels. In his day, it was really just the proliferation of television, and cable was just starting to come on the scene. It was a big deal back then. But his argument is that all this media is really just an entertainment, and it's really just a distraction from the things that we should be caring about, the things that might be more important to us than just mind-numbing entertainment. And it's definitely a critical work, but I've included the first 3 chapters as optional reading if you are interested in delving into this idea further. I wanted to make sure I gave you that information. Now, another theoretical perspective to think about when we talk about the future of social media and virtual reality and wearables and biotechnology is also thinking about technological determinism. And this is the idea that technology is really what drives social change. This is a controversial idea. We could debate this all day. Is the technology driving our social change, or are we driving social change and we're just coming up with technology to try to sort of keep up in some way? I always talk about this in my undergrad Intro to Mass Comm class. It's a pretty big concept for them, but one way to help them understand is to talk about whether or not we should be as connected today as we are, because we have social media and because we have personal networks of hundreds, if not thousands of people. We're often given the perception that we should be in touch with all those people regularly. Is that really the case, or has our society just, I don't know, adjusted or adapted or changed for the better or for worse and given us opportunities that weren't previously there? Technological determinism is a really important one to consider when we're thinking about the future of social media and the future of digital home integration. For example, we in my house just purchased an Amazon Echo several months ago. This is one of the hands-free wireless devices that can control an entire house. I mean, if you have the right technology integrated into your home, you can tell the Amazon Echo to turn off and on your lights if you're not at home. We aren't there yet. Give my husband time. I'm sure we'll get there. But what we use it for is for listening to music. We listen to a lot of Pandora at my house, and it's really convenient to be able just to say, Alexa, play Dave Matthews Band Pandora. And all of a sudden, I have my Pandora station playing. Hands-free. She can also order things from Amazon for you, which is also pretty scary. And I'm a little paranoid. I think she's always listening to us. Not that we say anything that I would mind anybody else hearing, but it's just a little creepy to know that someone's listening in, at least for her name. Her name is Alexa, if you're curious. So lots of interesting things to ponder for thinking about the future of social media. Keep those theoretical perspectives in mind as you are wrapping up the readings and the viewings for this unit. Thanks so much for such a wonderful class. I have enjoyed talking with all of you, and I'll be in touch more soon with more information very soon. Bye.